Hi, welcome to tonight's webinar, which is going to be in two parts. So this first half, we are going to be talking about recruiting adult volunteers, and then about halfway through, which you can skip ahead to if you're watching back on the recording, we'll be starting to talk about digital tools for growth and social media, online adverts, and that sort of thing. My name's Pippa. And I am a project coordinator and communication manager at Woodcraft Folk. And yeah, we'll just get the ball rolling. So this first half of the webinar, we're going to cover places to find volunteers, and then we're going to look at some different kind of demographics commonly of our volunteers. So young volunteers, which might be venturers and district fellows already involved in the organisation, but also Duke of Edinburgh award schemes. Parent volunteers and how they can be encouraged and supported to volunteer in a way that suits them. And then we're going to talk a bit about a warm welcome, as that's really important to retaining volunteers and turning any inquiries into kind of active members of your group. And then we'll finish with a few top tips around recruiting adult volunteers. So where to find new volunteers? Different things we've found through our various new groups projects have worked to different extents in different places. So overall, our suggestion is to just try many different avenues and see where people access near you. So the local volunteer centre, you can make contact and see if they can promote any opportunities you might have. They might have an online form or an email newsletter. They might have like notice boards at their centre, or they might have a service where they match people who want to volunteer with volunteer opportunities. So it's definitely worth a chat with your local volunteer centre. And then volunteering fairs, they might be run by the volunteering centre, they might be run by the local council, a college or university, or maybe even a large employer in your area. And generally you want to be having like a stall in a kind of fair environment. And you can take along information about potential roles, maybe some sweets, and maybe a little activity to join in to make the stall interactive. You really want to try and encourage people to stop and have a conversation with you, and then you can tell them more about the different opportunities on offer and how amazing Woodcraft Folk is. Then, and we'll cover this a little bit more in the second half of tonight's webinar, is advertising online. So we've used sites like doit.org, which is all about volunteering, indeed.co.uk, where you can advertise jobs, but you can also advertise volunteer roles. And it really depends on who is looking at which sites locally. We've also had some success through other kind of more sales sites like Gumtree, or like local what's on listings as well. You can kind of add some opportunities to those. And we found that organisations looking to place volunteers have grown their awareness of us through listings on Do It. So that's the place where volunteer centres, people who do supported volunteering schemes, or maybe youth workers look for opportunities for the people that they work with. Whereas on Indeed, we've had more inquiries from those who are looking to build their work experience and are generally looking for ultimately paid work, but want to develop their experience in the meantime and their skills. And then similarly, talking about more detail later on, social media call-outs. So growing your social media following can help you to recruit both volunteers and young members, as well as being kind of better known and understood in your local community more generally. So you might want to make a specific post about a potential role to capture people's interests, or you can actually post roles like job adverts and invite people to apply through kind of Facebook as a platform. And then other places, community events. So you can attend local events like fetes and fun days, and that can help you find potential volunteers and young members. it also, taking part in those kind of events can offer a flexible volunteering opportunity for those who could only help out occasionally. They might not be able to come to every group night and help out, but they might want to take responsibility for organising attendance at a particular kind of fete or festival. So they could help make the stall or design and run the activity that you take there. And then posters and flyers, which on their own don't tend to be very effective, but it just adds to the places where people have seen the opportunity and have heard of Woodcraft Folk. So putting those up in supermarkets, on community notice boards, handing them out through kind of school book bags. Definitely ask your local co-op or other supermarket if you can put one up, and put them up maybe in libraries also. I've been quite good at having places where you can just get the message out that Woodcraft Folk is looking for volunteers and that we are growing to more people. So then thinking about different demographics of volunteers. So different people will volunteer for different reasons, but volunteering is actually most prevalent kind of among two groups, the 16 to 25-year-olds and the over 65s. So young people generally are more likely to be looking for volunteering opportunities, particularly to kind of develop their skills and their experience as they're growing up, and that can help them in life, but also in work and in their studies. So you might want to approach, if in your district you have a venturer group and district fellows, they can be a really good place to start without asking them to come and help out with younger groups. That might be suggesting that a group of them might want to do one night annually or each term, and they take over and run the group of kind of woodships, pioneers or elfins. Or it might be one or two of them want to get involved on a more long-term basis and become part of your kind of group leadership team who run the activities. So they might be participating in the Duke of Edinburgh Award Scheme, or there are other young people who aren't already involved in Woodcraft Folk who are participating in the Duke of Edinburgh Award Scheme might be interested in Woodcraft Folk as an opportunity. So within that award scheme, at bronze, silver and gold level, young people are asked to undertake a certain number of volunteering hours, and that can be with an organisation of their choice. So it's definitely worth contacting local schools, or in some areas, local councils run an open award scheme access that those leaders can then promote volunteering with Woodcraft Folk as an opportunity to the young people who decided to take part in the scheme. Similarly, universities and colleges quite often have volunteering events, so like the fairs I was talking about on the previous slide, where you can promote local volunteering opportunities, but they might also have programs or a volunteering officer that promotes volunteering opportunities to their students. So it's worth getting in touch to see how they might be able to put you in touch with other young people, particularly those who are on undertaking courses, maybe related to childcare, to kind of maybe sometimes sports or education, that will want to get some hands-on experience alongside their studies, and might be really keen volunteers. Overall, the thing to remember, again, young volunteers, like adult volunteers, need to undertake a DBS check and pay for membership, or the group may pay for their membership of the National Woodcraft Folk if they're over 16 and they're working unsupervised with young people. If they're under 16, they can become members of Woodcraft Folk for free. They just need to do the membership process. So like young volunteers, another kind of group who make up a considerable proportion of our volunteers in Woodcraft are parents. And some groups run entirely with parent volunteers in a cooperative model, whereas others have one or two key leaders and parent volunteers drop in and out on a rota basis. So if you currently have a group where there's not a lot of parental involvement, a rota can be a good first step to encouraging parents to become a little bit more involved in the group. So that's about, depending on how many children and young people you have in the group, maybe asking them if there is one night in a term where they would be able to stay and help out with the activities. It might be asking them, sending them maybe a little survey or a form, asking if there's any particular skills or talents they have. There would be a particular activity that they could run for the group. So someone might be a carpenter, they might be a mechanic, they might have a passion for singing, they might have a particular craft skill that they're really proficient at that they would be able to bring to the group, to the young people. And then you'll be able to kind of call upon them to run a session. It might be sending out a specific request for an event or a camp to make sure that you have the necessary kind of adult to young people ratios, and that might be a way that they could dip their toe in as a one-off commitment to see what helping out with Woodcraft Folk is like. And then again, they need to become a member and do a DBS check if they are working unsupervised with children or staying overnight at an event. So if they're coming to camp and staying overnight, they'll need to become a member and have the DBS check in place. If they're just doing the occasional night on a parent rota, they don't need to worry about that. And there's guidelines on the Woodcraft Folk website for where the specific thresholds in between are in terms of safeguarding processes for asking people to become members and go through that vetting process. The thing to remember with parent volunteers is that we want to make sure that nobody feels like volunteering is compulsory for their child to take part, because in increasing and widening our participation, we need to make sure that we are open to young people and their parents of all backgrounds and circumstances. And some people might have other children of other ages at home that they need to take care of. It might be that their child coming to Woodcraft Folk is their only kind of personal free time in the whole week. They might need to get certain errands done. So we don't want to feel like anyone to feel like that they can't, their child can't participate if they can't volunteer. But we also want to help them build their confidence if that's the barrier, and give them a chance to kind of dip their toe in helping out in different ways. So that brings us nicely onto a warm welcome. So we can use all these adverts to go down all these different channels to try and recruit volunteers, and we'll likely get lots of inquiries. The biggest factor in converting those inquiries and interest into volunteers who are helping with the running of your group is making sure that they feel welcome and giving them a really positive experience from their first contact with Woodcraft Folk. So you want to get to know the potential volunteer and find out what their strengths and interests are. And we have an enrolment form that we, sounds quite official, but it's basically a kind of series of questions on a piece of paper that we use with staff-led recruitment in our new groups projects to have a chat with potential volunteers, find out what they want to get from volunteering, find out what skills and experience they have to give, and generally, show a real and genuine interest in them as a person. And the copy of that will be added to a link on the page that this webinar will be shared with on the website. You also want to give them information on training and support network available to them. So showing them how to look at the calendar on the website for upcoming face-to-face training opportunities, showing them where they can find things like these webinars and the online training modules in things like safeguarding. Inviting them to district meetings or to your next regional or annual gathering so they can get to know other people within the organisation, and offering them another volunteer as a buddy if that's something that they would like. We also want to make sure that not all roles will suit everybody, and we want to find the role that fits a volunteer best, because they're going to be happiest and help deliver your activities best. So letting them try out multiple different roles is a good way to help them find one that suits. And they might also like to shadow someone in a similar role. So not take on that responsibility straight away, but see what it's all about and what that role would entail by kind of being there, a helping pair of hands. So they might be really interested in kind of food preparation, but not ready to be KP for an entire camp, but they might want to help out with that for a day or two of a camp just to see what it's like, and then they might want to take it on in future. And then when they've chosen a role, but in fact when they're looking at what different roles are, we need to make clear what the role is and what the responsibilities it has, because that can be one of the most off-putting things if you've signed up to do something, but actually there's all of these things that are attached to it that you didn't really realise were part of the role, and that can be overwhelming and cause people to kind of just not be involved with the organisation completely. And we want to make sure everyone feels comfortable and supported to take on new skills and new responsibilities. So rounding up with some top tips. Things to remember: the best way to find new volunteers. There is no one best way. It varies from place to place. It depends what potential volunteers are using near you to find opportunities. So overall, just try lots of different ways to see what works, and then keep going with the ones that work in your town, city, village, location. And then we need to also remember that retaining occasional volunteers is as important as recruiting new ones. So not everyone will be able to come week in, week out. We need to value all of the current and all potential volunteers, whether they can provide a one-off activity or be there for every single group night and camp. If they feel valued and like they belong, that'll encourage them to continue to volunteer and maybe get more involved. So that might be just remembering really to say thank you for the time that they've given. And there's also thank you certificates. So you might want to make your own, or there are a number held at Folk Office if you'd like some official Woodcraft Folk thank you certificates to share with volunteers near you to help them feel like their time is valued. So that brings us to the questions section. We've got about 4 minutes before we said we'd start looking at digital tools. So I just wanted to open it up if anyone's got any questions that they'd like to know. Cool. So we're nearly at half past, so I think we'll move on to looking at digital tools for growth, which is the second half of tonight's two-part webinar. So this part of the session, we're going to look at a number of things. We are going to look at online adverts and places where you can place those. We're going to think about knowing your audience and how that can help us tailor how we use the internet and other online platforms to help us to increase and widen participation in our groups. We're going to look a little bit at social media platforms and some of the basics of different kind of accounts and what we might use them for. Thinking about growing our social media presence and our following in the digital sphere. And then looking a little bit at some top tips for what makes high quality content and some overall top tips at the end of the session. So online adverts, you can use them for various different purposes, and you need to decide on who you want to reach. It can be difficult to create an advert that appeals to everybody. It will do some awareness raising across all of these groups, but you want to tailor it where you put it and what the content says really to what you want to achieve. Are you advertising for more volunteers? Are you looking to speak to parents, particularly of our younger groups, so wood chips, elfins, and probably pioneers too? If you're using online platforms, you're going to be talking to their parents to try and encourage them to bring their kids to your group rather than the young people directly. Or you might be talking to the young people directly, particularly if you work with venturers or you're a DF looking to kind of grow the number of DF members local to you. And around that, you need to remember the age limit of some social media platforms. It's usually around 13 is the official age on which young people can be on social media platforms. So we shouldn't really be looking to talk to young people of pioneer age directly on them because they shouldn't really be using them, even though many might be. So this is a factor in determining where you advertise and what content you use. There's lots of different places you might put online adverts. So doit.org is very much focused on volunteering. It's listing as though like a job site, but just for volunteering opportunities, and people generally search by postcode to find opportunities local to them. So you want to make sure that you're listing an opportunity. If it's for a group, saying where that group meets, because that'll be, or most usually meets, because that'll be a factor in helping people who are local to it to find it. Then sites like Indeed.com, which is a job site, but you can place free adverts for volunteer positions. And we've had quite a lot of inquiries from those who are seeking to build up their experience. They might be changing careers or young people building experience for the first time before they get their kind of first job. Also, charity job, you can place volunteer adverts. We found it works better in larger cities. There's more of an audience for charity job than in more rural areas. Again, it's a job site, but you can place volunteer adverts. You can place online adverts on social media. So that might be on making profiles and accounts for your group, your district, but it might also be putting an advert on other local groups, so like What's On or childcare forums, mums or dads groups, or other family activity orientated locations on social media. You might be able to place an online advert on other organisations' websites. So that might be for the local council. Often like to advertise what's going on for young people nearby. Volunteer centres will advertise activities for people to volunteer with. And then local event listing sites are quite often happy to take adverts for free activities that people might come along to. Similarly with like what's on sites. So they might be standalone, they might be attached to a local online or hard copy magazine or newspaper. And then there's places like Mumsnet, where you might be able to speak to parents of children or to parents who want to volunteer. And then things like Primary Times and local online magazines. And this isn't an exhaustive list. There's lots of other places where you can place adverts. Quite often, if it has a particular local audience, that can be more effective with translating the advert into young people coming to the group or adults choosing to volunteer or support the district. So what should be on an online advert? You want to make sure that your advert is clear and to the point, so people know what you're advertising. Is it a taster session? Is it the group that you want young people to come along to? Is it a volunteering opportunity? But we also need to not presume that the reader will even know what Woodcraft Folk is. So we need to include some information in there that tells them what Woodcraft Folk is, what we do, and the selling points of the organisation. Why would they want to get involved? What could they get from being part of this amazing organisation? So we want to outline the opportunity. What is the volunteer role? Or what activities do the group do and what age group? So trying to be as specific as possible, that people kind of have some definite ideas about, if they respond to this advert, what are they signing up to? What are they finding out more about? You want to make sure you've also got details of somebody to contact by email, phone, or a message on a social media platform for more information. It might be an individual, it might be the group or district contact or the volunteer coordinator, or it could be a group email address. So one that's picked up by different people so that you don't miss any responses if an individual goes on holiday or something like that, so that people can take it in turns to check it by having a group email, and that you're not necessarily having to put personal contact details out into the public domain too much. When you're writing your advert, make sure you think through the opportunity carefully. If it's for a volunteer, you want to make sure that they will know what they want them to do in the advert. People are unlikely to sign up to volunteer if they don't know what's going to be asked of them. So do you want them to come for an hour and a half a week to help out with activities with 6 to 9 year olds? Or are you looking for somebody with some financial management skills who'd quite like to be a treasurer, who could do it in their own time and maybe pop down to the group night once a month to kind of collect subs and things like that? If it's for an event that you're trying to promote, so a taster session or an activity day or a camp, you need to ensure that all the relevant information is on there so that people know where and when to attend, particularly for a kind of taster session or a free activity day where you want them to experience Woodcraft Folk activities. You need to know where they need to go and when as key information. Okay, so social media, there are lots and lots of options. Social media has expanded a lot over the last few years, but generally you don't need to be everywhere in social media, and this is where a little bit of research comes in handy. You want to decide who's the target audience, who are you trying to talk to. If it's for elfin group, you're probably trying to work out where are the parents, where will you find them, and you could speak to your current parents and volunteers and see what sites they use and what would be the most convenient for them for staying in touch. If you're if you're DFs or adventurers who may be running their own social media accounts, that's likely to be a different platform, and they might want to ask their friends what kind of sites they're using. You could also use a search engine to see what other similar groups might be doing in your local area, or similar groups with a similar, like other voluntary youth organisations. How do they communicate with current and potential members? Also think about, what are you happiest and most confident in using? If you as a volunteer or as a group of volunteers are going to take on responsibility for social media, it's got to not be too much of a chore. It wants to be what's going to be convenient and easy for you to use. Overall, it is much better to choose one platform, say just have a Facebook page or just have a Twitter account or just have an Instagram feed, and use it really well and keep it up to date, than have several and not be able to keep on top of it. Because that will show to the people who want to try and find it, and it can be counterproductive. So thinking about that, if you were just going to use one social media account or platform, you want to be using the right one. And that depends what you want to be doing with it. And all of these have different ways that they might contribute to supporting and growing our organisation. So if you have a Facebook page that lets you promote your group activities to current members and to potential members, there's not a lot of commitment needed for someone to choose to follow a page. They might be a general supporter, and they might share your content with other people they know. Whereas having a Facebook group, it can be made private, so that those conversations and images that you might be sharing, depending on the permissions for young people, aren't in the public domain. But you could limit it to current members where they can engage in conversations, and that could help you plan activities for your next trip or camp or something like that. A Twitter account lets you send out updates, generally quite short, unless you're going to link it to maybe like a blog or a photo sharing site, about what the group gets up to in its activities. But we found in particular it's a good place to engage with other organisations, including the local media, rather than a lot of individuals. Our followers tend to be more, so it might be other people interested in providing activities locally for children. It might be other organisations interested in ideas that link to our aims and principles. It might help you find contacts for like groups, to group nights or activities or trips. In particular, that's kind of the audience that we found on Twitter. And then Instagram, as these are kind of the three biggest platforms I'm going to talk about here. Instagram has a lower average user age. So on Facebook, you're more likely to find people who are parents. On Instagram, you're more likely to find young people themselves. So it might be a place to find and recruit venturers and DFs. And if you are or work with that age group, particularly if those feeds are run by young people of venture and DF ages, that's going to appeal more to their peers. So some basics of having a social media account, key things to think about. You want to make sure that you've got a profile picture and a header image set up on your account, as that's kind of the shop window of what's the content that's always going to be there when you're adding your posts on a every basis. And it wants to say something about the group. So you might want to use the Woodcraft Folk logo in one of those images, but also you might want to say something about your group locally and what their particularly their focus is. Is the thing that brings young people to your group camping? Is the thing that brings young people to your group like volunteering, get a social action in the local community? Is it indoor games? Are they very food orientated? Asking the young people themselves of what are the activities that they like most, and showcasing those on your profile can help to kind of promote the group as it wants to be seen itself. You want to add a description and put that kind of bio text on any social media platform, and you want to summarise who the group are in a way that those who have never been part of Woodcraft Folk will understand. So you need to include some of those words that explain that they run fun activities for children and young people, that we believe in education for social change, as well as kind of more specifics of saying we are members of Woodcraft Folk and we are based in this place. For kind of key facts about the group that anybody could then get a good picture of what and who the account belongs to. And make sure you include a link to a website. If you've not got a local website, you can link through to woodcraft.org.uk, or you can link through to your group's page or the district's page on woodcraft.org.uk, so that people can then access those details directly. And you want to make sure that you've got contact details on there. So if anyone's interested, they can get in touch. That might be on some platforms that they could just send you a private message, but you might also want to list an email address. And again, as I mentioned previously, making this a group contact rather than an individual one means that whoever has the time or not on holiday, is around, can pick up and deal with any inquiries. Every group and district is welcome to have an @woodcraft.org.uk email address. There's a typo on here. It should be @woodcraft.org.uk, not @woodcraft folk. And that will be kind of the name of the group or the area or the district. And that can be personalised. And you can have that as a group account. All you need to do is email Leanne in the office at info@woodcraft.org.uk, and she will help you to get that set up for your location. So once you've got your basic account set up, you want to think about growing your followers. So if you're using Twitter or Instagram, you might want to search for like-minded groups and individuals, follow them, tag them in any relevant posts, and to invite them to follow you back. On Facebook, it's easier to start by inviting your friends and family and your personal connections, and ask them to share any content. You can also tag other pages in your posts and encourage them to share your posts. So that might be we've had recently been tagged in things like local cooperative food stores or bookshops or local kind of trade union branches, those kind of organisations who might have a similar ethos, be based locally to you, and help you to kind of reach new audiences. You can also share any posts from your Facebook page to other local Facebook groups, which might be like a what's on going around here kind of group, or like a family activity orientated group. And then you can invite people who like those posts to then like your page. If you're using Facebook, you might also want to think about creating events, not just posts. So you might want to make an event for the first group night of term, because these are then listed. If you make it a public event, it can be searched for and advertised on a geographical basis alongside other similar events, and more people might stumble across them. And then in your posts, to help you grow your followers, you can also use hashtags to join in with wider conversations. Some of those might be around certain days of the year or certain themes or more ongoing conversations, and that can get your posts seen by people who are engaging in those dialogues. So then, in terms of your content, you can think about timing your content. We don't want it to be really difficult for you to make sure that you're getting messages out there through digital platforms. So one of the best ways to do this is you can schedule content on most platforms to go out at certain times, even if the time is not the most convenient for you to be sending it. You might be just logging on at like 10 p.m. on a Monday night, but you could set it up to go out kind of peak times during the week. So in Facebook, there's an option called Publishing Tools, which allows you to schedule posts. And if you go to Twitter's TweetDeck, which is tweetdeck.twitter.co.com, it lets you do the same thing. Or you can set up an account with other platforms that are just for social media scheduling, like Hootsuite, HubSpot, Buffer, or lots of other ones, many of which have free accounts if you've only got a couple of channels that you are managing. Across all those different platforms, you can use their like inbuilt analytics, which will tell you when's a good time to schedule it. When are the people who are following your post most likely to be online? Generally, social media traffic is heaviest in the morning between about 7 and 9, and in that after school and work period from about 4 through till about 8. Depending on age groups, it might be slightly later in the evening. And they tend to be good times to send out messages to reach large audiences, but it's not an exact science. Again, looking at when people local to you are online can be really handy. So when you're timing content, you also want to make sure you've got sufficient content. So it looks like the group or the district are active and there's lots of fun things going on. You really want to aim for at least a couple of posts a week. If you're using that kind of scheduling management software, that means that you can set these up in advance. So you might want to go in and spend an hour setting up some posts for the term that are simply post kind of the day before or a few hours before the group night, saying what's happening that week, what activity are you doing, and inviting people to come along. Or it might be after those activities take place, sharing a quick photo of what the group got up to that week. So it might be taking a photo of an artwork they've made. It might be a photo of the young people participating where you've got permissions for that. And just showing the group members having fun is a really good way to help promote the group. Every post that you put out there is an advert for the group. You want to make it look like something that other people want to join and be part of. You might also want to link into national or international campaigns, conversations. For example, today is International Human Rights Day. So there's lots of hashtags and conversations particularly happening around Universal Charter of Human Rights and its 70th anniversary. So there's things like that link from our aims and principles that are influencing our program that we can then build into our conversations that we're having on social media that help us to get seen by people who share our values and our interests and therefore might want to become part of Woodcraft Folk. As well as sufficient content, we want to make sure it's engaging content. So wherever possible, you want to include a photo, a video, or a website link in your post that gives people something to engage with rather than just a piece of text. Having more than having text alongside one of these other kind of forms of content gives people more to interact with and a better picture of what we get up to. You want to think about your audience and the message you want to send to them. So every post is an advert to potential members. If you read what you've written, would that make you want to join? There is a place so sometimes we'll be using social media for those last minute updates to say a meeting venue's changed or we've had to cancel last minute. And that's fine. That's gonna happen. But where we're sharing what has happened, we want to make our activities stand out and why people would want to come and take part in those activities. And then we want to make sure that, I skipped ahead, that any content is using the strengths of that platform. So if we're tweeting, we need to get to the point quickly. We've got that limited space. Instagram posts need a really captivating visual because people will look at the image first and then choose to read any text that goes alongside it. Whereas Facebook, you've got more of an equal footing. So you can use the images to capture attention, text to give more detail, but people might even read the first line of the text first, so you can grab their attention with some words as well. And then calls to action. So you want to try and include a question or a prompt in your posts to encourage, again, that engagement or further action. We want to encourage people to share our posts with their networks. Quite often, if you've got photo permissions for the young people in your group and you're able to kind of post photos of them taking part, their friends and family are then likely to kind of share them more widely with their personal networks of what they get up to. You might want to ask a question of the people following your account, and that can help you to kind of get to know your audience a little better. Again, you can also maybe inviting them to join and to come to an event or join your group as a very direct kind of call to action. And then making sure that there's like a website link for more information about a particular post that you might be, if you're linking into those conversations around possible activities and international days that you're celebrating and our program, letting them access more information elsewhere on the internet, or a way to get in contact with a person, a group contact or email address or something, if it's about finding out more about when and where the group meet if they wanted to join. So that's been a whistle-stop tour of online and digital tools for growth. I'm going to finish with some top tips. So, thing to remember is having an account on one platform that you keep up to date regularly is much better than spreading your available time too thin and it being really patchy in what you can deliver. You want to make sure that your content isn't just text-based, so you're including photos, videos, and links to web pages within your posts to encourage engagement and give people a visual idea of what we get up to as well. Remember to use hashtags to join in with wider conversations and get up your posts seen and help to grow your followers. Make sure you include local contact details or a link to woodcraft.org.uk in your profile so people can find out more about the organisation as a whole or locally so that they can get involved. And then connect with and follow other Woodcraft folk accounts is a really good way to start growing your following, and you can see what other districts and groups get up to in how they're using digital, and that can be some inspiration of how to take it forward. So that has brought us to the end of our Digital Tools webinar. I'll be around for about 5 more minutes until 9 o'clock if there are any questions. Otherwise, thank you very much.